Hello, everyone. This is Emily Burley, president of ELS. Welcome to today's ELSX, and thank you for joining us. ELS is a community that brings together executive assistants supporting the world's most influential leaders. We are the creator of ELS Forum, a unique event experience that brings together top executive assistants just like you. We cultivate professional development by providing a space for EAs to learn, connect, and collaborate and contribute solutions to their greatest challenges. EAs gain support and training and inspiration from expert instructors and powerful peers, plus discover a renewed sense of passion and purpose in their career. The ELS Forum is coming to over 20 cities across North America. To see if your city is on the list or to reserve your seat, visit elsforum.com. Today, I am thrilled to partner with Jeremy Burrows. Jeremy has over 12 years of experience as an executive assistant supporting fast-paced, high-capacity leaders. Jeremy launched the site goburrows.com in 2016 to help executives and assistants gain more time, energy, and success. He is the founder and host of the Leader Assistant podcast, where Jeremy and his guests challenge and encourage assistants to become irreplaceable, game-changing leaders. Hello and welcome, Jeremy.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
And I have to say that Jeremy and I think, have quite a bit in common, actually. We're both Midwest millennials who are quite passionate about the EA community and really developing professional development opportunities for assistants. And I think we're probably both true entrepreneurs at heart. So it's really a pleasure to have him here with us today. So thanks again, Jeremy, for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Today, Jeremy is going to be discussing how assistants become leaders, but without burning out. There will be an opportunity to get your questions answered, so please go ahead and submit those at any time via the questions tab on your toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen. A recording of this webinar and the certificate of attendance will be emailed to you tomorrow. And you can go ahead and download Jeremy's slides via the toolbar as well. On that right-hand side of your screen, you go to handouts and you can download a copy of your slides. It's now my pleasure to hand it over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it. Hope everyone's having a great day. I guess it's Thursday. I had to look at my computer to see what day it was. It's been one of those crazy EA weeks, and yeah, I'm excited to jump in and talk about how we can become better leaders, but also not burn out. So before I jump into the topic, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. This is a picture of me from one of my first days in the office as an assistant. So I am the one holding the phone down to my younger brother. Either it was a very important call that I was helping him place, or he was calling our mom for a diaper change. A few years later, I discovered the art of dressing for the role you want, not the role you're in. As you can see, very snazzy. Fast forward 30 plus years, my ears are still very large, and I absolutely love being an EA and helping people get things done. So this is my wife, Megan, our two boys, Weston and Silas, who are 5.5 and 7.5, as they would tell you. And we currently live in St. Louis, Missouri. As Emily said, I'm a proud Midwestern boy. So she also mentioned I started goburrows.com a few years ago. You can check out my resources there. I also host a podcast called the Leader Assistant Podcast. Podcasts, I want to say a quick note about them. They're a great medium for learning on your way to work, while you do dishes, while you're doing yard work, maybe while you're riding the bus. They're also a great way to learn while resting your eyes from a long day of staring at the screen. So as assistants, we've got a lot of computer and scheduling and emails, and I get home at the end of the day and I'm like, I don't want to stare at another screen. And even reading a book is hard sometimes because I want to rest my eyes. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts to give me a way to rest my eyes but still learn. So anyway, the show is exciting, fun to work on. I've got a lot of amazing interviews coming out soon, including one with Emily, which you'll be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that one. And then I also have, as if I had or didn't have enough to do, I have a full-time day job. I'm executive assistant to the founder and CEO of Jane.ai. So we are an artificial intelligence software company in St. Louis. And just a quick overview. So we have a secure, meaning GDPR compliant, SOC 2, all that fun secure stuff for those in industries that care about security. AI native, which means you can ask questions and our natural language processing will be able to determine what the intent of your question was, even if you don't spell things right or ask it the exact way that was put into the system. And it's also a knowledge sharing platform. So it connects to applications, documents, but also people. So the idea is that all your information should be accessible in the simplest way possible, and that we should not waste time and energy looking for information. So it's been really fun to be a part of this. I was actually hire number one, which is very rare for an EA to be not only hired number one, but at a company where the CEO is a proven CEO who he was the former CEO of Answers.com, sold it for $900 million or more. So it's a very rare opportunity to be part of a new startup, be hire number one of a proven CEO. So I'm very excited to be a part of this kind of AI revolution. And just a precursor, I'm going to be talking a lot more about AI and the future of assistance in a future ELSX webinar in October. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. All right. So I'm going to take a quick drink and then we'll jump right into how assistants become leaders. So we started our company, like I mentioned, I was hire number one. Day number two or one, we had 6 people, and I was the only non-software developer. So what happened was my CEO came to me and said, hey, listen, we're not going to hire anybody else. We're going to build this product for a few months. Can you be basically the HR director? Can you take care of accounting? Can you take care of office management? So he asked me to run all this stuff, which I personally don't like math or accounting or paperwork. And I'm an introvert. So, I love people, but not that much at one time. So then he basically was asking me to deal with numbers and math and people. So what could go wrong, right? So I, of course, was, excited to be a part of this new company and happy to help and serve however I needed to. So I did that for the first 10 or 11 months or so. So fast forward almost a couple, I guess 2.5 years now. We now have a large team. So thankfully, I'm no longer head of HR. I'm no longer dealing with accounting or even office management, really. I get to be more strategic executive assistant roles, and so I'm really excited about that. So during those early days of wearing many hats, though, I did discover that to become a leader in my role as an assistant, I had to learn to manage some tensions. I know a lot of times we talk about characteristics of assistants and we talk about what an assistant needs to do, but I think that something that I realized during this time was it's not as cut and dry. It's not as black and white. It's not as clear sometimes that, oh, you just have to have these traits and go. There are these tensions. So I'm going to talk about 3 leadership tensions that I had to manage and wrestle in those early days, and then ongoing I've had to. Proactive versus reactive, flexible versus focused, and confident versus humble. Now, this is not good versus bad or more important versus less important. It's a spectrum that we have to navigate, and we need to kind of learn to swing the pendulum toward the appropriate tension as needed. So again, it's not good versus bad. There's this tension, and both sides are good, but there are times and seasons where we need to focus on one or the other. So let's dive into the first tension, proactive versus reactive. So as assistants, we feel like we're in a constant battle between planning ahead and reacting on the fly. So being proactive, a leader assistant anticipates problems before they arise. So I'll give you an example that from that first year. So I was doing accounting, and again, I didn't have any really accounting. I had some budgeting experience, but I didn't have a lot of accounting experience, especially in a for-profit. Um, I was keeping detailed spreadsheets, even though I wasn't sure what exactly I was looking at half the time. I was at least keeping very details, all the details in the spreadsheet. I was keeping receipts, um, basically just trying to keep all the data and organizing it in a way that made sense to me. And and my goal during that time was, okay, don't screw it up, don't get us in trouble, don't lose a bunch of money and all that. And a fun fact, fast forward to this year, we got a notification from the IRS that they were going to audit our 2017 tax season, which of course, I kind of almost passed out because I was like, 2017 was when I was the accountant for most of the year. Um, so anyway, thankfully we passed and I accomplished my goal of not getting us in trouble. So just another way of just figuring things out, keeping track of the details. And I was just being proactive, even though I didn't know and I wasn't knowledgeable or experienced in that area. I just knew that I needed to plan for somebody else to come in and have questions and be able to answer those questions. Now, it's humanly impossible to anticipate everything. Now, I anticipated us hiring an accountant and trying to have the details for them. I did not anticipate us getting audited by the IRS. Um, so anyway, it's not possible to anticipate everything, but we can, or so we must be reactive as well. So a leader assistant quickly tackles problems as they pop up. So another story from the early days of our company, we applied for South by Southwest, which is a large music and entertainment event in Austin, Texas. And there was a pitch fest that Ashton Kutcher, you may have know from movies and that 70s show back in the day. Ashton Kutcher has a venture capital firm, and his firm called Sound Ventures was doing a pitch fest, a competition at South by Southwest. And so I had applied for my CEO to compete at this event. And we ended up, applying, not hearing back, waiting, checking back in, saying, hey, is there, and they're like, we're still working on it. Well, 5 days before the competition, so like the Monday before the Saturday event, we found out that we were selected out of top 5 companies to present. And not only were we going to be presenting to Ashton Kutcher, we were going to be presenting to Gary Vaynerchuk. We were going to be presenting to Matthew McConaughey. We were going to be presenting to Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, Melody McCoskey, the CEO and founder of StyleSeat. So we were kind of like, all right, well, I guess it's happening and it's in 5 days. So of course I had my plan for the week as a detailed proactive assistant. I had my plan for that week, but everything went out the window and I had to react. I had to book flights, hotels, rental cars in Austin, the busiest weekend of their year. I had to do research on the judges, had to help my CEO practice his pitch over and over again, rewrite it over and over again. So I didn't have any time to freak out. I just had to figure it out. I had to take off my proactive hat and put on my reactive hat and be okay with it. So I used to be I used to have a really hard time with kind of last minute changes, and we'll talk about that in the next tension. But again, in this situation, it was exciting. It was fun. We worked late nights every night that week, getting ready for it. We ended up winning. I think we probably placed second, but we had a blast and made some good connections, and it was just a good lesson in needing to be reactive. All right, so the next tension is flexible versus focused. So let's start with flexible. So a leader assistant is willing to do almost anything. So all the different tasks that I did in that first 10 to 12 months, taking out trash, cleaning the toilet, picking up lunch, assembling furniture, um, killing wasps, whatever it was that needed to be done, I just had to be adaptable and just take care of business. And one kind of side lesson that I learned during that time, especially when some of our young engineers may or may not have clogged a toilet or two. Something I learned as a bonus lesson that I want to share is that a leader assistant serves with a positive attitude. It isn't always easy, but we should keep a positive attitude no matter what's thrown our way. There are too many negative people in the world and in your company, so lead well by having a positive attitude. So we got to be flexible, but we can't be flexible all the time. A leader assistant knows when to say no in order to stay on task. So in today's distraction-filled world, it's more and more difficult to focus on anything for long periods of time. Even this webinar, you're probably checking your email, you're probably looking at text, you're probably scrolling Facebook. It's very hard to focus. I had to, at times, ask my CEO to work from home so that I could get stuff done. I just was like, listen, I keep getting interrupted by people. Just give me a day and I'll catch up on everything and I'll get everything done. Just give me a day to work from home. And he was great and totally understood and let me do that. But if I'm stuck in the office and I can't get home, excuse me, I do use headphones religiously to avoid distractions. I've gone through probably 27 different pairs of headphones, trying them out, sending them back, trying another pair, sending them back. As you saw in my pictures earlier, I have large ears, so it's very difficult to find headphones that block out sound and are comfortable to wear all day. But they're very, very key to focusing, especially when you have some loud coworkers, which in an open office, which I do. But focus does not just apply to our environment, it applies to our to-do list. So I would say my CEO would task me with things and I would ask him and I would kind of push back gently, sometimes more firmly than other times, and say, listen, could we offload this task to somebody else? Or does this really need to be done? Could we remove it completely from our list? And so that was good to have times like that where I was showing that as a leader, I wanted to stay on task with the things that were important and that I knew that saying no would actually help us accomplish our overall goal for the year, or for the quarter, or whatever. So again, a leader assistant knows when to say no in order to stay on task. And we'll talk about confidence versus humility next, and this is part of having confidence will help you say no. But I think this third and final tension is the most important to manage if we want to lead well. So let's start with confidence. So leader assistant knows they have what it takes to get the job done. How can we expect to lead from our role if we're not confident in our ability to get the job done? So when my executive first told me that I was essentially going to run the company for a while, I knew it was going to be a challenge and it was a bit overwhelming, but I really wasn't surprised. I had been in EA for long enough in kind of I was in a nonprofit, but I was in kind of a startup vibe where we were figuring things out. So I'd been in EA long enough to know that I could figure it out, or at least try to figure it out. Again, I was honest with him. I said, hey, listen, this isn't my expertise. This isn't my strength. This isn't even my passion. So I'm totally game helping, but we need to make sure this isn't a long-term solution. So my experience helped me have more confidence. And I think that experience is one way to get confidence, for sure. But we all go through periods where we doubt we have what it takes. And in these times, I recommend a few things. I recommend grabbing lunch or coffee or happy hour with someone with more experience. You can reach out on LinkedIn. I do a lot of LinkedIn reach out. I know I'm probably connected to many of you on LinkedIn. If not, feel free to reach out and say hi. But LinkedIn is a great way to you can literally just search for assistants in your city and send them a note and say, hey, I'm in your city. I'm an assistant. I see you have 15 years of experience. I have 2 years of experience. I would love to hear your horror stories, your success stories, and hear your tips and tricks. So there's nothing stopping you from reaching out, and there are tools available to you that you can reach out and find other assistants in your area and just soak up their knowledge, and learn from someone with more experience. Another way you can kind of build your confidence is you can get professional training and coaching to help you gain confidence. This could be, a leadership coach or an assistant coach like myself or other amazing assistant coaches. There are several out there that specifically focus on helping EAs. But I also recommend checking out different training and events like the ELS forums, for EAs. But I think I want to encourage you all to not just look at training that's for assistants. Try to read and listen to and go to events that your executives are going to. So if you really want to get confidence in your business, use cases and context and your industry standards and all that fun stuff, if you really want to get more confidence, learn from the things that your executives are learning from. So if you see a book on your executive's desk and you know they're reading it, go read that same book. If you see that they're listening to a podcast or going to sign up for a webinar, sign up for the same webinar, sign up, listen to the same podcast. So again, professional training and coaching can help you gain confidence. And the other thing I'll say about professional training is if we don't invest in ourselves, then we're not going to have as much capacity to invest in others. And to help others and to really work, well as a leader assistant. So don't be afraid to invest in yourself, whether that's, if maybe your company won't pay for a training, pay for it out of pocket. I know it can be tough and a challenge. I've spent a couple $1,000s on a training that was okay, wasn't great, but it was okay. It was okay, but it was one of those things where, I need to take the risk and invest in myself and try it out and learn. And I did learn some things from it, and I'm glad I did it. It's only a couple $1,000s. It's not the end of the world. But all that to say, experience and coaching and training will only get you so far. I truly believe that the key to unlocking a deep-rooted confidence is to remember this. Your performance at work does not impact your worth as a human being. Until you realize that you're a valuable person, no matter how your day at work goes, you will lack confidence. You could have all the training in the world. You could have all the experience in the world. You could be connected with all the most mature, experienced, seasoned assistants in the world. But if you equate your performance at work with your value as a person, you will not have the confidence. You will not have a deep-rooted confidence that you need. So if we don't remind ourselves of this on a regular basis, our confidence will fade as we let things at work affect us personally. So confidence comes from remembering you are valuable, no matter how good or bad you perform at work. Again, confidence comes from remembering you are valuable, no matter how good or bad you perform at work. So I don't know. I feel like I should say it 100 times because we all struggle with it, myself included. Um, but I'll leave it at that. You can download the slideshow and print out the slide and put it on your desk or whatever you need to do. But confidence is just one side of the tension, right? What about humility? How can we be humble and confident? Let's talk about humility and being humble. A leader assistant is grateful for the opportunity to serve others. Now, this is not always easy. People are people. But in general, I personally find joy in serving others. It's part of one of the main reasons why I enjoy being an assistant is because I like helping others. There's just something about serving and helping others accomplish their goals that just gets me up in the morning. Now, I'm willing to bet many of you feel the same way. Assistants tend to have to enjoy this at least a little bit to be effective in their jobs. There's a good Robert Greenleaf quote that says, "Good leaders must first become good servants." So having humility is so crucial to becoming a leader. You cannot serve others if you're not willing to set aside your pride. So you can be confident and not prideful. It's a little, some people have a hard time. They equate somebody that's overly confident with being prideful and arrogant, but you can be humble while also being confident. There's another quote from Jim Young Kim that I like. Says, "No matter how good you think you are as a leader, my goodness, the people around you will have all kinds of ideas for how you can get better." So for me, the most fundamental thing about leadership is to have the humility to continue to get feedback and to try to get better. Because your job is to try to help everybody else get better. So how can we serve and help others and really help our executives excel if we're not being humble and learning and um, growing ourselves? So being humble also means asking for and applying feedback from others, as well as admitting when you screw up. Speaking of screwing up, there's nothing more humbling than admitting when you've made a mistake. And I made a pretty minor slash large mistake. So we were going to buy a building. My business partner, or sorry, my CEO and his business partner were looking at buying some real estate so that they have a parent company where they've started a couple nonprofits and then they started Jane.ai. And so they wanted to kind of buy a building where they could have office space for all of their, you know, organizations under their umbrella partnership. So we went to make an offer on a building, and it was myself, our CFO, our realtor, and my boss, the CEO. And we were writing together this LOI offer, and we wanted to offer $2.5 million for this building. So we sent the offer. We all reviewed it, myself included. We sent the offer out, and again, we wanted to offer 2.5 million. Well, there was a minor typo in the offer letter, and the offer letter actually said, the one that we sent, mind you, said $3.5 million instead of $2.5 million. So it was a $1 million typo that my CEO, the CFO, the realtor, and myself all missed. So what did I do? Well, as the OCD detail, catch all the errors assistant, I stood up and I was like, listen, this is my fault. It's not going to happen again. I owned it. Now, it wasn't 100% my fault. There were other people who looked at it too, sure. But I admitted that I missed it and I took ownership. I was like, this is not going to happen again. So thankfully, the $1 million typo ended up not being an issue because they ended up not wanting to sell the building anyway. So, thankfully we dodged that bullet. But again, there's nothing more humbling than admitting when you've made a mistake. Another example of this is my executive was saying we kind of have an all hands where the whole company standing around and my CEO was talking, and he made a little comment that about interns working on the product, and the interns, it's better, they're actually getting to work on the product instead of building furniture or something like that. And somebody, he didn't mean it this way, but somebody took it as like, well, I build furniture all the time, and does that mean I'm not valued? And that's, and so the way he said it did sound pretty harsh and offensive to those that do put together assemble the furniture. Um, and so but he immediately was like, I apologize. That's not exact. That I said that the wrong way. I did not mean that. I totally value. Anyway, my point is, even the CEO screws up. The question is, will will you let your mistakes humble you, and will you admit that you're wrong and apologize, or will you let your pride get in the way of you becoming a respected leader? Questions to consider. All right, so to recap, we've walked through these three tensions: proactive versus reactive, flexible versus focused, confident versus humble. So, as a little action item for you, I really want to encourage you to pick one of the sides of one of the tensions to work on over the next several days. Again, this isn't good versus bad. Each of these things are important, but there are times when we are reactive when we should be proactive, and there are times when we're trying to be proactive when we need to be reactive. So, for example, for me, I'm going to commit to work on being proactive by going through my executive's calendar week by week, day by day, event by event for the coming 6 months. That way I can make sure that I haven't missed any details and that I've thought about all the possible scenarios of commute time and travel. If he travels a bunch, then I need to make more time for the family. That's going to be my one that I'm picking is proactive. That's the tension that I want to work on. So pick one, write it down, send yourself a text or an email right now, or a Slack or a Microsoft Teams note, so you don't forget. Pick one of those tensions. I really just want to encourage you to try to improve and consider that tension over the next several days. All right, so managing these tensions is a lot. It's a lot of work. It can drain us both physically, emotionally, and drain our mental energy as well very quickly. So it can be very, very taxing on us to be proactive all morning, get everything ready, and then everything goes out the window at lunchtime and you have to react all day. Just switching back and forth as an assistant, that's what we've got to do often, and it can be very draining. And our overall health directly impacts our ability to produce, as well as the quality of what we produce. So, how do we become leaders? How do we manage these tensions without burning out? So, I want to talk now about burnout, and I want to talk about how we can recognize the signs of burnout first, because I think the first way to avoid burnout is to know what burnout looks like. So, here are a few ways to tell that you are approaching burnout. The first sign is you're physically ill more than usual. If you're getting sick when everybody else in the office got sick, in the winter, then okay, that's one thing. But if you're, getting sick again a few weeks later and you just seem to be ill more than often, or even just physically ill, like almost ongoing, that's a very clear sign that you could be burning out. Another one would be you get irritated very easily. This is a fun one, especially for your spouse or your kids, or maybe the person sitting in the desk next to you. This can be a fun one. This was one of those signs that I didn't see right away, but my wife saw right away. Um, we we had a time where I burned out, and I was just kind of, she was on edge because I was just would get irritated or angry really easily. And it was because I was just working too hard, working too much, not taking time off. And yeah, it was just not a fun time. So again, if you're getting irritated very easily, that could be a red flag that you're burning out. All right, another one, you can't remember your last day off. Hopefully you can, or maybe your last vacation, or maybe your last couple days off. And by day off, I mean no email, no text, no phone calls to the executive wondering, if everything's okay, or literally just off the grid for 24 hours. When's the last time that you did that? And then lastly, another sign is you're tired all the time. Um, some of us just need to go to bed earlier. Some of us need to maybe sleep a little bit longer on the weekends, maybe take a nap. If you're tired all the time, that is definitely a sign, can be a sign of burnout. So if you're experiencing one or more of this list, I would recommend taking a day or two off ASAP, get some rest, be honest with your executive about what's going on. It's better they find out now as opposed to when it's, too late, like you're quitting or you make a major mistake and get fired because you just don't have anything left in the tank. So are you approaching burnout? Be honest with yourself. Ask a close friend, family member, spouse, partner. Ask someone if they think you are burning out, and just be open to hearing the feedback. All right, so let's talk about 3 things we can do to avoid burnout now that we kind of can see some of those signs that might be creeping up. So the first one is to set boundaries. So I spent my last job, I spent 6 years as an executive assistant where I rarely had a day off or a vacation with 0 interruptions. Sure, I had a quote unquote day off every week, but I was getting texted, I was checking email, it was half my fault, half my executive's fault some of the times. And so I just rarely had time where I had 0 interruptions. And I know plenty of other assistants who've had the same experience. They reached out to me saying, "Hey, I can't turn my phone off because what if something happens and I can't not check my email on vacation? What if somebody needs me?" So sure, emergencies happen, but calling something an emergency doesn't make it a true emergency. Most things can wait. Urgent is rarely urgent. So I think something that my prior boss would do is he just thought every single thing was urgent and he treated everything as urgent. And I just kind of got sucked into that world and would do the same. And so this is something that I learned in between roles where I took some time off and I sold my house, sold most of my stuff, took my wife and our 2 boys on a trip across the country. We just kind of really set boundaries and I just really was off the grid for a few months. And I just started realizing that, yeah, I was treating everything as urgent. So think about the last time you received a text during off hours. Maybe it was last night. Could it have waited? Would a simple email asking you to take care of it the next day have been sufficient? What if you had your phone on Do Not Disturb starting at 8:30 p.m. and you just happened to see it in the morning? Would that have been okay? Most odds are yes, everything would have been fine. Again, urgent is rarely urgent. So set boundaries, set expectations with your executive. Here's when I'm going to be online. Here's when I'm going to be offline. When I'm offline, here's how you can reach me in an emergency. All right, so the second way to avoid burnout is to find a hobby. So during my time when I was just running like crazy and not taking days off, whatever, I started realizing I worked on my days off, but and I knew I worked on my days off, but I was trying to figure out why I worked on my days off. And it took a career change to finally realize that part of the reason I was working on my days off was because I wanted to stimulate my brain. I wanted a challenge. I wanted to feel like I accomplished something. In other words, I did not have a hobby. If I would have had a hobby to challenge myself, to use my creative juices, then I would not have fallen back into, well, I'll just work because I don't know what else to do. So again, I worked on my days off. I burned out. You can ask my wife how she felt during that time in our marriage, but you may have to buy her a drink first. It was not pretty. But I now realize that spending time on a hobby is one of the most practical and powerful things we can do to avoid burnout. So block out time to enjoy your hobbies on a regular basis. And if you don't have a hobby, you can start by, finding something you enjoy doing. Whether it's, here are a few ideas to get you thinking. So playing guitar, knitting, yoga, sports, gardening, starting a business, writing, traveling, reading, swimming, building things. You can Google and find a whole bunch of other hobbies, I'm sure interesting ones and odd ones, but just find something you enjoy doing. The point is, find something that you can regularly spend time doing other than work. Something you enjoy doing that you can spend time on other than work. And I do want to have a disclaimer here that watching Netflix does not count as a hobby, by the way. Just, that's free. That's a free bonus point for you. All right. The third way to avoid burnout seems pretty obvious, but it can be the hardest, especially as an assistant with a fast-paced, high-capacity, fast-paced executive. Take time off. When's the last time you took a real vacation? Again, no Slack, no email, no texting. Turn your phone off, leave it in the house or the car or whatever when you go to the beach. When's the last time? New York Times article was talking about Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and SpaceX. He had not taken more than a week off since 2001, and that was because he had malaria. So I think that we need to stop pretending that the world revolves around us, and we need to take our vacations. Your executive will thank you for taking time off once they realize how much more productive and focused you are when you come back from regular breaks, and how much energy you have and how much passion you have because you're not burned out. You actually have energy and you're ready to go. So again, set boundaries, find a hobby, and take time off. All right, so in closing, I just want to take a couple minutes to encourage you. Again, this whole concept of being a leader, I think actually all of you are leaders. It's just a matter of, are you intentionally thinking about that? What are you doing with your influence? Are you an effective leader, or are you a negative leader, negatively influencing those around you? So I hope this was encouraging to you. I don't want to encourage assistants to hustle, 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 hustle until they burn out and be a leader, but also burn out. I want to encourage assistants to hustle, to be smart with their time, not just working more, but working smarter. But I also want assistants to rest well. So work hard and rest well. You are crucial to the success of your organization and your executive. You are a leader assistant. In fact, I think that assistants are one of the most valuable members of any team. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for picking up lunch, creating that slide deck, booking that flight. Thanks for fixing a typo that would have made your executive look unprofessional. Thanks for taking out the trash and ordering more toilet paper, cleaning that coffee spill off the conference room carpet. Thanks for having the courage to say no for your executive and also say no to your executive. Thank you for scheduling meetings. Thank you for rescheduling meetings, taking notes in meetings, sitting in meetings with your executive had to bail on last minute, canceling pointless meetings and getting the best snacks for meetings. Thanks for being hospitable to billionaires and other VIPs while waiting for your always late CEO to show up. Thanks for proactively managing your executive's calendar so they can spend time on what matters. Thank you for making an executive decision on your executive's behalf when they asked you for help and when they didn't ask you for help. Without you, things fall apart. Without you, there's chaos. Without you, your executives and your company's growth is stunted. So you are a go-getter, critical thinker, better than AI, get things done, rockstar assistant. You are a leader assistant. So in closing, I wanted to invite you all. I have a 30-day assistant challenge that helps you become a better leader. It's 30 emails every weekday for 30 days, or sorry, one email every weekday for 30 days, really short, bite-sized, encouraging, challenging, just something to help you think outside the box on an ongoing basis. And this 30-day challenge I sell for $29, and today I wanted to give it to you all that registered for this webinar for free. You just have to go to free.assistantchallenge.com to register for free. Again, just as a thank you for participating, and even just signing up for this shows that you want to grow and you want to learn and you want to be a leader in your role. And so I just wanted to say thanks for that. And this link will be open for a couple days. I'm going to shut it down in a couple days, but go ahead and sign up at free.assistantchallenge.com. And yeah, thanks again for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome presentation, Jeremy. Thank you so much for preparing and sharing it with us today. I'd just like to remind everyone that they can submit questions via the question tab on the toolbar. We already have some great ones, so I'm going to dive right in. Jeremy, what are the best practices for confronting a boss on something that you disagree with?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a fun one. So I would say don't just confront them based on your personal maybe reaction or personal subjective opinion. I would come to them with data, um, particularly if your CEO is a data-driven CEO, which a lot of them are. A lot of executives like to see the data behind something. So do a little bit of research, come up with some reasons why you disagree. But the biggest thing is don't just say, hey, I disagree with this. We need to do something else. Come back to them with suggestions on what you think we should do. So they don't want to hear, typically they don't want to hear, oh, you disagree. Okay. They want to hear, okay, if you disagree, what do you propose that we can do alternatively to what I wanted to do? And so again, try to do some research, get some data, and make sure you suggest a solution. Don't just identify the problem or the disagreement. Hopefully that's helpful.
What suggestions do you have on approaching taking time off when you have a real high functioning executive? And this could be maybe in a startup situation when they essentially won't respect that time off. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I would do two things. One, I would come up with a communication tier. I don't know I need to come up with some fancy name for it. I always get stuck on what to call it. Basically, the idea is that, okay, you have different mediums or different modes of communication. You've got text message, you've got instant message on Slack or Microsoft Teams, you've got email, and then you've got phone calls. You and your executive should have a very clear kind of guideline or rules for how you use each mode of communication. So what I do with my executive, we basically have a grid or a tier where the highest priority is a phone call. So if I get a phone call from my executive, I answer it. Even if I'm in a meeting with another executive, I'm going to stop and I'm going to step out and I'm going to answer the phone call because I know it's important and it needs to be done right away. If I get a text message, I'm going to reply within a couple minutes. I know that's also pretty high priority. If I get works its way down. If I get a Slack instant message, then I know it's priority, like probably that afternoon or within the next few hours. So I try to keep an eye on that. But then if it's an email, it's usually, okay, if I can get this done in the next 24 to 48 hours, then that's great. So that's kind of our tiered system that we use, and then we're both on the same page as far as how we do that. So what that does is, okay, there are times when I will turn off Slack and email, but not my text message or my phone. I'll keep my phone on. So he knows, and I know, like he can email me at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, but he's not expecting me to reply because he knows that I'm not checking my email on Saturday nights. I'm going to check it on, maybe Sunday night right before the week getting ready, but usually Monday morning for sure. So, and I know he's not expecting me to get it done till Monday morning. But there are times, and he does a really good job with this, but there are times when he'll text me on a Saturday and say, "Hey, sorry to bug you, but I need this information, whatever." And so then I know. So I guess if you don't have, so that would be the first thing I do: set up a system, set up expectations on what mode of communication you're going to use and what the priority rank is of those modes of communication. And then the second thing I would say um, is just try it. Like just ask him to try it, and you may need to adapt. So one thing we do is he logs off at basically noon or 1 on Saturday till 1 on Sunday every week. Pretty religiously, he shuts all his devices off, does not check email or Slack or anything for that 24-hour period. And so maybe you guys can start with a 24-hour period. Maybe you say it's all day Sunday, or maybe you say it's 5 p.m. Saturday to 5 p.m. Sunday, and you just start with a 24-hour period, and then you work your way up. The other thing we do is we have nights during the week where we work. So we work late Monday and Wednesday night, but we don't work late Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. So again, you can just kind of almost set up the expectations and prepare to work certain hours and certain maybe chunks on the weekend so that you can kind of guide those tasks and guide that work in those slots and maybe start there. So, but again, just bite-sized. I would try small, and then just show him that. Listen, you need show him how him or her show him or her how much more productive and focused you are when you come back from those times of interruption. That will help you get more of those times.
Jeremy, how do you suggest asserting yourself or being more assertive in your work when you work for an organization where you're expected to, stay in your lane, so to speak? How
Hmm.
do you step up as that leader?
Yeah, I think part of it is know your stuff. Depending on the organization, take some training. Be again, read what your executives are reading. Be familiar with the jargon and the lingo they use in the industry, and just get yourself more exposure and soak up everything, and then that will help you be more comfortable to assert yourself. But again, I think the key is just you've got to the reason there's probably a reason you're not assertive, and the reason you're not assertive, if I was to guess, is because you're afraid that if you do assert yourself, then something bad's going to happen. And what I try to remind myself is, and I know this is hard, this isn't easy, but the worst thing that's going to happen if I assert myself is that I get fired. And in the grand scheme of life, and again, and this isn't easy for everyone to say this, but in the grand scheme of life, getting fired is not that big of a deal. And so, would I rather step up and lead and take a risk and try and then get fired, or just kind of sit back and just kind of work for a company that doesn't value me over time? So again, I know it's not easy. It's easier said than done. Um, but we just have to remember that it's work, not to take things personally, and to really just take risks. And we don't have to be jerks about it. We don't have to be an assertive, arrogant, what. But we can we can take baby steps. We can try bite-sized, assertive moments, and just kind of build up from there.
Jeremy, it sounds like you have a really good relationship and one that's developed over time with your executive, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. But for those listening in that may not be in the same in the same situation or they haven't gotten there yet, how would you approach your manager or your executive, if they're really not providing you with feedback and they're also not open to getting feedback? How do you even approach that? And one thing I'll say about this, and I think it's really interesting, is this idea of continuous feedback. It's something that we're doing here at ELS, or we're at least trying to do it, is this idea of not waiting until you have a scheduled meeting or necessarily an employee annual review, but the ability to give proactive and constructive feedback throughout. How have you been able to do that in your role and with your executive?
Yeah, I think that the key is one to have one-on-one meeting every week with your executive so that you can have that time to build the trust and build that relationship over time. I think that every executive and their assistant should meet at least for 15 to 20, 30 minutes every week. But then in that meeting, you should spend maybe 5 minutes doing a quick rapid fire of all the things you need to talk about and do. But then you can spend the rest of the time really digging into and asking them questions. So I have a blog post called 6 Questions Your Assistant Should Ask You. And I think I did a guest blog post on ELS that has kind of both sides of it. Questions that assistants and executives should ask each other. But every week I ask, what's on top of your mind right now? Like what's keeping you up at night? That way I know what their priorities are and I show them that I'm thinking about what their priorities are. You can ask things like, in what way do I frustrate you? How would you recommend I change? What's one thing I could do to make your job less stressful this week? Things like that to really just show that, it sounds kind of like therapy because questions are what you go to a therapist or a counselor and they just ask you questions. They don't really say much. They just ask you questions. But I think that's one way to get really to the root of things and build that relationship. So again, meet every week, try these questions out, to really you just got to it takes time to build trust and think. I'm lucky I was in a spot where I've known this guy since he was in college, and we've kind of known each other over the years, never worked together, but we knew we were going to be a good fit from the get-go. So not everybody gets that opportunity. All right, so I'm wondering.
Sorry, you know what,
Oh,
Jeremy? That was me. I'm
okay,
sorry.
great.
I was
No,
talking and still had my microphone on mute.
nice.
Okay, so now that everyone can hear me, our last question is about how I think you're really inspiring within the executive assistant community, and that the work that you've been able to do is really admirable among EAs, across the US and even across the world. So I think the big question that we have for you today is, how were you able to pursue your business, so your blog and your podcast, while still being a high level of EA and meeting those demands? How did you balance it all without burning out?
Yeah, I think the short answer is funny, but also a big reason. I stopped watching as much Netflix. Um, I honestly just was like, I'm spending a lot of time on social media or watching Netflix or, just mindless passive activities. So I kind of made a conscious decision to really want to jump in and start this podcast a couple months ago, and I was like, you know what? If I spent even half of the time that I was spending on Netflix, I could actually get a lot done, and I could actually help a lot of assistants. So that's really kind of what I just gave up. You have to give up something if you want to start something, and so that's what I gave up mostly. And then, really, it's just about focus. Like it's about these uninterrupted times where my wife Megan is amazing, and she has a lot of she coaches pole vault and high jump at the high school and takes care of our boys, and she's got a lot of stuff she likes to do. So we just kind of make sure we're on the same page, and we schedule out like, okay, well, Tuesday night you're going to work on your track plan, your workout plan for your track athletes, and I'm going to work on my podcast. And then Wednesday, I'm going to be working late, so you're going to be working on your other projects. And then Thursday and Friday, we're going to hang out with each other. And so we just kind of set these expectations of, all right, this is a work night, this is not a work night, and that way it doesn't bleed into every night, and or we don't, we kind of, well, what should we do? Well, we could work. Okay, well, let's work. So that's kind of a big way that we've been able to keep going at a pretty high capacity, fast-paced pace, but not burn out.
I totally second that idea. I recently had an epiphany where I realized I was spending too much time on social media and I needed to get through a pretty stressful time at work. So I deleted all my social media apps. Did not delete my accounts on those apps. I just deleted them for 2 weeks so that I could get through the work that I needed to get done. And then my reward at the end was that I was able to re-download them and get back on social media. Whatever
Nice.
works for you. That could be Netflix for some people. It could be social media. It could be anything. But sometimes you have to cut something out to make space and time for something else. And it may not be permanent, but just for a period of time. I totally
Yeah,
agree with you, Jeremy.
yeah, and the last thing I will say too is I've been involving my family in the podcast. So I've had my boys do a lot of little quick, like, welcome to episode 12 and those kinds of fun things, and tell a joke. And my wife is the one that recorded the voiceover for the intro. And so we just kind of, I really wanted to involve them in it so they could see kind of what I'm doing and see a different way. Honestly, I wanted to teach my boys that there are different ways you can make money. It's not just, oh, you go to a job and whatever. You can literally get paid to go into a studio and record audio for people. And so anyway, having my family involved also has helped with this whole process.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's a refreshing perspective for those of you who haven't listened into Jeremy's podcast, the Leader Assistant podcast, right, Jeremy?
Yep.
You can listen in, and it's really fun that you provide a lot of value and a lot of practical takeaways, but it's refreshing that you have your family involved as well. So
And it's fun.
well, good. Well, I would really like to express my gratitude to you, Jeremy, for taking the time out of your, as we know, very busy schedule to speak with us today. Jeremy will be delivering more ELSX webinars this fall, and you can register for those or any of our upcoming ELSX webinars at elsforum.com. As a
Awesome.
reminder, the recording of this webinar and a certificate of attendance will be emailed to you tomorrow. I hope you have enjoyed today's ELSX, and a final thank you to everyone for joining us and participating. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I wish you continued success. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.